We can, though, talk about policies, and we can talk about our thoughts on certain things. What did you, just in general, think of the election season that we had that seems to go on 24/7?
I thought it was the craziest election that I've ever experienced in my lifetime, and I don't think it's over yet. I think it's going to be a crazy next 4 years as well.
It's going to be at least interesting. There were some things that caught me off guard in conversations, and we can talk all day about, hey, the Democrats didn't show up, or there were third-party voters, or this, that, and the other thing. Setting all that aside, we now have a situation which some people are going to be happy about, some people aren't going to be happy about, and in that sense, it's not dramatically different from other years. What I think has been dramatically different is many people that I spoke to were like, well, it's just 4 years. And I think that's a terrible mistake, because it means that you've overlooked one of the single most important aspects, and that is the President of the United States appoints judges to the Supreme Court, and those are lifetime appointments. And so if you were just thinking, well, it's 4 years, let's shake it up and see what happens, I understand the sentiment. The problem is that the next president is going to appoint somewhere between 1 and perhaps 3 Supreme Court justices. Some of them are ready to retire, some of them are old, and one of them is already dead and in need of replacement. And that is going to affect the balance of the court potentially for 20 or 30 years. You're talking about an entire generation of people who are going to be affected by the decisions. And while I agree that the Supreme Court isn't likely to reverse itself, they tend to like precedent. And as much as I do disagree with the politics of some of them, I will say that I think John Roberts, as Supreme Court Justice, has been incredibly respectful of the court. So I'm optimistic that, catastrophe isn't going to ensue, and we're not going to everybody's going to lose their rights. But those things can potentially happen, and the subtle things that happen when the Supreme Court makes a decision that sets down precedent that affects what's going to happen for the next 20 or 30 years is something I wish people wouldn't overlook when they're deciding. I know people who are single issue voters, like I'm only going to vote for or against the person based on their position on abortion, or pick your issue. Being concerned about the Supreme Court, though, isn't a single issue. It's all the issues. It is about how we are going to continue to structure the society in which we live.
Well, and if Mr. Trump makes good on his promise to appoint justices that are like Scalia, well, I've read a lot of Supreme Court opinions, and Scalia has no problem with the idea of overturning past cases and not respecting precedent. So he's made that very clear, or he did make that very clear when he was alive and writing opinions. So that's something to be concerned about, that, they do respect precedent and prior decisions, but not all of them and not always.
Yeah, there's also this issue of whether or not Supreme Court justices are originalists, trying to read the minds of the founders. And I've said this before, while I appreciate the individuals who founded our republic and set up most of the rules that we still have in place, some of them I may think are ridiculous, what the founders believed about some things needs to be changed. Our founders kept slaves. That needed to be changed. Our founders didn't allow women to vote. That needed to be changed. Merely trying to point back to this is what they had in mind 2 centuries ago when they constructed this country, and we're going to stick with that. That's stagnation. That's not a way to get any sort of progress. That means that anything new we learn about how to do something better is trumped, before we even get to have a discussion about it. And that's a potential problem. So while we're not going to sit here and talk about election results and talk about all the various issues, I know that there are atheists who voted for pretty much every single person who ran, even people you hadn't heard of. I would imagine that I've forgotten his name, the Mormon gentleman that was running in Utah.
Evan
McMullen. I would imagine there were atheists that voted for him as well. So this isn't about atheists as a single voting bloc, and it's one thing that we have to be aware of. As the secular community continues to grow and more people participate, there is going to be a plurality of ideas within our own community. How we handle that, how we deal with it, and what we do on behalf of it is going to tell the world who we are. And while I support people's rights, First Amendment's rights to protest, and go ahead, peacefully demonstrate all you want, when you cross the line into doing property damage and things like that, you're no longer working in your best interest. You are giving ammunition to the very people that you're trying to oppose. And similarly, when you complain about something when it doesn't go your way and have the opposite view when it does go your way, that's not necessarily hypocritical, but how you deal with the individuals that you're disagreeing with might be. And this is coming from somebody who probably blocked 24 people on election night. But there were specific reasons, and that is, number one, I'm happy to continue having conversations with people, including and especially people I disagree with. I just don't always want it on my Facebook page, and certainly don't want it on my Facebook page during the election results.
Right. Well, and although the ACA can't take positions on specific candidates, we are going to continue to be, as both as individuals and as a group, vigilant about protecting church-state separation. That needs to be kept in mind more than ever. Also, evidence-based and science-based education and public policy, and those are the things we can talk about and advocate for. And we will continue to do so, and I will continue to advocate for those things.
And I haven't been to the new website to make sure it's still there, but I'm assuming the position statements that we have that tell what the ACA is about, they're up there.
99% sure they made it in the transition to the new website, but if not, I will make sure that they do.